Welcome back to the Slugs, Bugs and Dirty Rugs podcast, episode 2, The Kicking Out. So in the last episode, I explained all about the lead up to how this all happened and how I was eventually kicked out of home and the relationship breakdowns and my own personal behaviour and everybody else around me. So that leads us on to this episode where we're going to be discussing the first days of my living rough and how it felt for me personally. Everybody's different, obviously. Things might affect people in different ways, but this is my personal experience. So in September 1998, I remember it vividly. It was around about the 11th, if I remember rightly, and my mum came to me. Now, my mum was just about to fly out to Spain on holiday with her partner, so she was about to have a good time. She came to me the night before and said to me, by the time I get back, this would be in a week's time, by the time I get back, I expect you to have moved out of the house. So yeah, that kind of put a bit of pressure on me. I can't honestly say that I hadn't expected it, I guess, but it still came as a shock. However, the thing that I couldn't get my head around was the fact that she was just going off to Spain on holiday and I was expected to find my own way. I didn't know where to go or what to do. So at the time I was living not just with my mum but with two of my brothers, and I didn't tell them for that week. I didn't move out, I didn't pack my things, I didn't prepare to leave the house. I just decided to stick my head in the sand and pretend nothing was happening. I didn't tell my brothers that this was supposed to be happening. I just didn't mention it. I just carried on. Didn't do anything. And then a week later, when my mum got back from Spain, yeah, obviously I was still there, wasn't I? And there was no messing about this time. She said to me, she came up to my bedroom where I was there, and she just said to me, I want you to pack your bags and leave. And I was like, I just remember thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do? Basically, I don't know what I'm supposed to do or where I'm expected to go or what. Because in case you didn't gather from the last episode, I was not a very streetwise person. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know anything about what to do. Anything. Like, I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't go for job interviews, as I explained before. I couldn't talk to people. Socially, I was very, very bad, and I just couldn't do it. So what was I supposed to do? I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where I was supposed to go or how I was supposed to go about it. I just didn't know. So what I did do, and I do remember this very, very well, what I did do was I packed my bag with all my essential things, and by essentials I mean things that I don't want to lose, right? So it could be there was probably some clothes in there, but there was like all sorts of bits and pieces that I didn't want to lose, like knickknacks that were important to me. And I put them all in my backpack, and I walked down to the bottom of the garden. As I got to the front gate of the garden, I took my backpack off my back, and just threw it down by the hedge in the garden. Because I wasn't going anywhere. I was not going to do anything. At that point, all I had in my mind was, I'm going to go out, and I don't want this bag on my back. And I don't know what I had in my mind that I was actually going to do. I just knew that I was just going to be wandering about for a bit, so I didn't want the bag on my back. It would get in my way, would slow me down, would be annoying or something like that. So I just left it there in the garden, and off I trotted, off I toddled into town just to have a wander about. Again, that day it's not very clear to me exactly what I did that day. I just remember that I was wandering about, and I remember in the evening, because the only fortunate bit about this entire thing, and again, it's gonna make me sound, in a bad light, but the only thing that was fortunate about that particular day that I was kicked out was the fact that it was payday for me. By payday, I mean I'd get my benefits, right? It was on a Thursday, and it was payday. So I could, I could eat, I could go to shops, I could get food and things like that, no problem. It's not a lot of money you'd get even back then. Well, back then it was definitely not a lot of money, but it was still, payday, yay. And I could eat, I could drink. Drinking became a popular thing of mine. And that evening I was walking in town, still without my backpack, and I bumped into a few friends that I knew from around town, and they were heading to the clubs. I explained to them what had happened, because I had no reason to keep anything from anybody. It kind of gets to the point where you don't really, there's no trying to protect people. I would in the past, perhaps not tell bad things that people do because it puts them in a bad light, but at that particular time where you are homeless, it kind of becomes irrelevant trying to protect other people who have kicked you out of home. So you just say, my mum's kicked me out basically, and I've got nowhere to go. And yeah, they just suggested that I come along to the club with them for something to do basically. So I did. I went clubbing that night, and I'm not much of a clubber. I never was, and I never became much of a clubber, but it was nice to get out of the cold, and it was nice just to have something to do for the evening. It's not something that I think I would have planned on doing anyway. It's just that it was suggested that's where I go, and so I thought, yeah, why not? And then after the clubbing, it was probably like 2 in the morning or something like that, and my friend there, he suggested that I just go back to his house to stay that night. So I did. Obviously, it's a one-night solution, so that's good. In the morning, it was a Friday morning, and it was supposed to be my first day back at college that day. And I because as you know, I failed on my exams. Well, I failed one of my exams. I had registered to go back to college to resit that one particular exam, so as to try and get back into go back to university or go to university. And it was my first day. I was going to be homeless, but it was my first day back at college, and the only thing on my mind at the time was, I've got to get to college now. So I woke up early, probably had a little bit of a hangover, and I headed off down to college to start, basically. And it turned out to be my first and only day that I attend that year at college, because at the time I didn't know what to expect going forward. I didn't know what was going to happen over the next weeks. I didn't know. I just thought to myself, I got to get to college, this is what I'm doing now. Not, I've got to find somewhere to live and, you know, do it that way. College was what I wanted to do, and I had planned on doing, and so I went. But I never went back, because as time went on, weeks went on, I was unable to. The rest of that day, I can't remember too much about, but I do remember in the evening again, I wanted to, well, I thought the night before went so well that I thought that is a brilliant idea to do that again. However, I didn't have anybody to go with, so I went on my own. I went into the pub first, had some drinks until about 11 o'clock, until that was shutting up, and then I went upstairs to the club. Well, I tried to go upstairs to the club. I remember this vividly. The doorman turned me away, and I'm not quite sure why. I suspect now, looking back at it, it was probably because I was a little bit tipsy, possibly too drunk, I don't know. Not sure, but he did give at the time the excuse that, well, he asked to see my ID, and I showed him my ID, and he said, so I always remember this, I always thought to myself, that's not right, what the hell? He said, that's not good enough, and he didn't give any other explanation. I was pretty pissed off at that point, because I showed him my passport, and to me that is good enough. And you know, I'm not au fait with the whole clubbing culture, so maybe it was just his way of trying to turn me away if I've had too much to drink, although he could have just said that, I don't know. Anyway, he didn't let me in, and I was pretty pissed off because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and that was my plan for the evening. Not a great plan, but it was a plan. And I didn't know where else to go, so what I did do is I ended up going to this park, which is actually just across the road from my mum's house, just by chance, because that's the area that I know, so that's the only place I was, you know, I was comfortable with going to. And I went to this park, and I tried to lay down like under not the swings, it's like an apparatus thing, like a climbing frame, and I tried to lay down underneath it, thinking that might shield me from the wind or something. It didn't really. The only thing that I remember is that it was bloody hard. It was like rock solid. The floor. It's like one of the tarmac type floor. It's not tarmac, is it? It's that rubber stuff they put down on parks. You know what I mean, I hope. That's what it was. And yeah, it was too hard. I couldn't get to sleep, and it was too cold. So I can't remember what I did after that, but I must have just ended up walking about, because I can't remember going anywhere else. On the Saturday, the day after, I did get back into the club. This time I was with my friends again, same ones that I spent the night, the first night I was out, those friends, and I ended up staying at that guy's house again. So I felt myself quite fortunate, to be honest. 2 out of 3 nights I'd had somewhere to sleep, so that was good, and things were going well as well as it could be expected, you know. But I couldn't keep asking him. Well, I mean, the 2 nights I'd stayed at his house were really because I'd been out drinking with him, and, you know, he was drunk and I was drunk, so he just gave me somewhere to crash, basically. So I couldn't really just say to him, yeah, I don't have anywhere to stay, can I keep staying at your house? Because, you know, it wasn't very fair. So after that, I didn't really have anywhere to go, if I'm honest. I felt like, well, one thing I do remember is that, as I said before, every time I met somebody that I knew, because especially when you were out in town and you're going to pubs and clubs and things like that, you bump into people that you know or you have known. Quite often I bumped into people that I haven't seen for a while that I knew of, and I just blurted out, yeah, my mum's kicked me out, my mum's kicked me out, my mum's kicked me out. It seemed to be quite a popular thing that I would say, because again, I had no reason not to say these things, because it was, you know, I didn't really need to protect anybody, because, you know, at the end of the day it was me that was having to sleep rough, or, you know, I was out there without anywhere to stay. I do remember I had to go to the job centre to re-register my address, because usually you get, well, back then you would be sent a gyro. If you're old enough to remember, congratulations, but if you're not old enough to remember, they used to send you like a little gyro. It's like a little payee slip thing, kind of like a check but not, and you take it to the post office and they'd give you cash for it. That's what used to happen, not all this miraculous straight into the bank thing that you get these days. No. So I would go to the job centre and I'd proudly announce to them that I was homeless. I mean, I proudly announced it because, like, I didn't know what else to say. People say, where's your address? Don't I have one? You know, but by saying things like that, I was kind of hoping that it would help me, or have people try to help me, if that makes any sense. Because if I think that's why I was telling everybody that I knew what had happened, because the more people that you tell, the more chance people are of thinking, hang on, he needs some help, let's help him. Because at the end of the day, I did need help, I just didn't know who to ask for help from. So if I told people that I was homeless, if I told people that my mum kicked me out, then maybe they would come back to me and say, right, I've got an idea, this is what you can do. But more often than not, especially those in authority, like the job centre people, I guess they get a lot of people that are homeless, and I didn't realise that. So it's not uncommon. So I was classed as NFA. No fixed abode. Yeah, that was memorable. There's quite a few people like that though that would pop down, because instead of receiving your gyro in the mail, you'd have to go down every 2 weeks to the job centre to pick it up. So that's the difference there. and you'd see quite a few people that were in that same situation. And yeah, but things were not, whilst things at this point were going okay, they were not going to get any better anytime soon, and they were gonna get much worse, and worse than I thought was gonna happen, because up to now, to be fair, I had kind of stuck my head in the sand again about how bad a situation this actually was and what I actually needed to do to try and fix the situation. You may be asking yourself, why hasn't he gone back to his friend? You know, the one from episode 1 where I spent a week at his house? Well, I didn't feel comfortable, especially after the first time he left. He allowed me to stay, or his mum allowed me to stay at their house for a week, and I didn't feel comfortable going back there and saying, hey, guess what, it happened again, or guess what, I'm just that stupid. I didn't improve things, and I didn't get better, I didn't do better, and yeah, I've been kicked out again. So I didn't want that situation, and so I didn't tell him. I did, however, go to his house quite often in the evenings, because it was somewhere to go. It was nice and dry and warm, so that's what I would do quite often in the evening. And then around about 10 o'clock at night, I'd leave and go do my own thing. I always did wonder what he actually thought, because I was trying to hide the fact that I was homeless, but I think as time wore on, it probably was quite evident. And I remember one time, because I actually it's quite embarrassing really, but I actually went into his bathroom and had a shave up there one time, and I came down. I must have gone upstairs with a bit of a beard and come down without a beard. So I guess I didn't think about that. Okay, I really didn't think about that. But, you know how that would have looked. Anyway, but his mum came to me and said, "Can you please not use the towel? Like, if I need to do that, there, she can provide me with another towel. Don't use their towels." Basically, makes sense. Okay, it does make sense. But I was trying not to tell people what was happening. That kind of goes against what I was saying before. I just told everybody that I was homeless, but I didn't tell the one person who may have been able to help. I don't know. Okay, I was genuinely embarrassed about the situation, so I didn't. So yeah, that is episode 2 done and dusted. What do you think? Am I coming across as like this strange man? Boy, I was a lad at the time, and I guess from the first few days I was just kind of winging it, I guess, and not thinking that this is serious, and just trying not to think that it was serious. And I don't know how I was thinking that things would improve. I just don't know. So thank you so much for joining me this week for this episode 2. Come back next week for episode 3, where we will talk about how I settled into life as a homeless person in the best possible way. Until next time, have a good one. Take care. Bye bye.